Okay, so I just recorded this whole video with my microphone off, so hopefully things go better this time. But I still really wanted to get this video out because I see a lot of people asking questions on how do they know whether an armor piece is good, and I'm going to go over the way that I look at an armor piece and which tier 5s excite me the most. Now, for all my numbers, I will be using the numbers of like a tier 5 because I will assume that either you are going for tier 5s or that you are already farming them. But the same general principle applies to all tiers of armor, of course. But because I am talking about tier 5s, I will also be talking about stat tuning, which is something specific to only tier 5s. Okay, so why is it important to know this? Well, first of all, there was no real addition to vault space in Edge of Fate, and so once you get to the point where you are farming tier 5s, vault space is going to become a really big issue, and you're gonna have to become a lot more selective of what you do with your vault space. There's a lot of different roles you can get on a tier 5. So I'm just gonna take a random roll of a tier 5. So they're in a tier 5, there is the archetype, which is a 1 in 6, right? And then there's the non-archetype focus stat, which in this case for this piece is super. And the way that you know this is you look at the stats, and the ones that are bolded, so in this case grenade and weapons, those are archetype specific. That is specific to gunner based armor. And super was completely random. So the plus 20 stat for this piece could have been class, it could have been melee, it could have been health, but it happened to be super. The last thing that is random is the tuning focus, which can happen on any of the 6 stats. And so in total, there's about 144 different tier 5 rules per piece. And then you also have to worry about, there's different sets with different set bonuses. And I'm sure now you can see why vault space is a little bit of a scary issue. The next thing that's worth noting is that on a tier 5, the stat points have 0 randomness to it. It is always a total of 75, and that split always goes 30 and 25 in the archetype based stats, and then the non-archetype focus stat is a plus 20. So when I'm looking for armor, how do I know what I should be looking for? And it's also something I want to mention is that the tuning focus for archetype armor on Ghosts is kind of weird and finicky. It doesn't seem to always work, and I hope Bungie continues to investigate it because it really just does not feel like it's doing anything. Back to armor rules, what am I looking for? So first of all, I want to point out that in PvE, at least, I consider the most useless stat, at least across the board, to be health, because it is pretty rare that you'll find yourself in a situation where or that you'll find yourself build crafting and be like, oh man, I really need a lot more health in this build, because orb generation is much more difficult than it used to be, with things like the heavy-handed nerf and attrition orb GLs getting nerfed. And there's just so many different ways to heal in this game that I think it is rarely the case that you need to build into health. And so I consider that the throwaway stat. I'm now going to make an example of my helmet because this is kind of what I consider to be a near perfect roll. It would have been better if the non-archetype stat was melee for me or class. But the point I want to make out of this is with armor tuning, for those of you who don't know, it selects a random stat and you can sacrifice points from a different stat to increase that stat. And I think when you're farming tier 5s and when you're comparing one tier 5 to another, tuning is almost always the most significant difference in my eyes. Because take for example this case, if I'm interested in a grenade build, well, I'm going to be looking for grenadier armor. And so having tuning on my grenade, which you can see the tuning is on my grenade because of the little 3-line indicator, having tuning there will almost always be useful. And it's also worth noting that whenever a stat is above 42, it is kind of weird and buggy. Right now I actually have 45 grenade on this helmet, even though it's showing 42, and the game is treating it like it is 45. And so that is just a visual bug. It is actually giving me 45 grenade. So I will pretty much always, with any armor piece, be looking for tuning focus being in its respective stat. And just that tip alone significantly reduces the amount of armor you will have to stash in your vault. Those are the biggest tips that I had for, searching for armor and knowing what you should be going for. I'm going to not talk too much about set bonuses, but just know like the Solstice armor set bonus is good, and the other set bonus that I kind of have my eyes on is the set bonus that is unlocked by doing all the mythic missions on Kepler, because that is a really strong set bonus for PvE at least. Before I close out this video, I just want to say thanks for the support on the recent videos. They blew up far more than I thought that they would, and it's kind of mind-blowing, and we are now like 400 subs away from monetization, and so helping out with that is greatly appreciated, but as always, watching is more than enough, and so thank you and goodbye.